All right, here it is. Stick to F1 podcast. Anthony Mingioni, Jason Myrtetus, episode 9. A lot to get into. And my little toy model of the RB16, the Red Bull car, has a floor. It has a barge board. Max Verstappen's does not. That's where we'll start. What a race. What a Grand Prix. I'm going to start here. Congratulations to Esteban Ocon. Because I'm not a big Ocon fan, but I love seeing new blood on the podium and on the top step. It's refreshing. And to see the reaction of Ocon as he parked that car and then had to run up the pit lane, but to see the reaction of a guy that, 18 years earlier in Fernando Alonso, who got his maiden victory in Hungary, the reaction to Ocon by him was just awesome. So congrats to Esteban Ocon.
Absolutely. Congratulations to Esteban. He ran a near perfect race today.
Flawless.
Considering the situation, right from his avoidance of the disaster at turn 1 right on through to the end, because I felt that there were several times during that race where Vettel looked like he was closing, and Ocon picked, he was on his horse today. He was hitting his spots, hitting it perfectly. It was like kind of watching, you watch a musician hit notes absolutely perfectly. That's how Ocon ran this race today. You just had that feeling as you watched him. It was going to take a massive screw up on his part, and it didn't look like it was coming at all. And he's got so much. Ocon's got talent. I mean, and he's one of those kids that, again, with so many of these drivers that, come from various backgrounds, some of them from fairly well-heeled backgrounds. Ocon's one of those guys who literally, his family, he's a kid who just came up, wanting to be a Formula One driver. His dad was a mechanic. Anybody's ever seen, obviously, the Drive to Survive first season episode on Ocon knows pretty much, he's one of those guys that, he had to grab opportunities when they came available. How he lost his seat after Force India basically cut him loose, and it became Racing Point, and Lance Stroll took his seat. And then, to where he's at, going to Renault, then it becomes Alpine, promising performances. And then he signs his 3-year deals we talked about in previous episodes, and the bottom seemed to fall out on him.
Yeah.
In France, at the Hungarian Grand Prix, and at Austria. And then he got to Silverstone, and I know they changed the chassis, and he seemed to find his pace again. He looked good there. And coming into this weekend, he had some great practice sessions, had a solid quali. So my feeling was he was back on an upswing. I don't think anybody would have guessed this.
Yeah.
Him winning his first ever Grand Prix, considering the conditions and everything. And again, it had a little bit of the feel of last year with Monza and Pierre Gasly.
Yeah.
That sort of pleasant surprise where why we watch this. We don't always think it's going to be. We expect it's going to be Max, and we enjoy watching Max and watching when he's on his dominance. We enjoy watching Lewis and what he does. But to see what Esteban was able to do today was a thrill. It was just thrilling to watch.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's this variable. Like, there's so much math and certainty in Formula One, but it's not always certainty. And this just proves that there is a lack of certainty, especially when you throw in the element of weather. And it was awesome the way he handled the Turn 1 incident, and then just never put a foot wrong. And both he and Fernando Alonso, just the racecraft and placement of their race car the entire day. Their cars were 8 meters wide. They weren't 4 meters wide. Just at the placement. I mean, Fernando did such a good job holding up Hamilton as long as he could. And make no mistake, the reason why I think Esteban wins the race is because of what Fernando Alonso did in holding him up.
Absolutely. He quote on, I think the phrase that Ocon used after the race, after he obviously thanked the team and everything, and he thanked Fernando for defending like a lion. That's the best way you could. And it was an absolute defensive masterclass. It was one of the best best defenses I've ever seen. And considering the man just turned 40, and he is going at it with arguably one of the greatest drivers. These are two of the greatest drivers of all time.
Yeah.
And they're going hammer and tong, fourth and fifth, and going into turn 3 and going into turn 4. And so many times for 10 laps, it was like it was just remarkable defense. And it was just, when you see stuff like that, it stirs your blood when you watch the sport.
Yeah.
You realize
It's a masterclass.
It's a masterclass, exactly. It just
Yep.
it was so phenomenal to watch that today, and what Fernando was able to do today. And again, we will see once things shake out with regards to all the post race stuff, whether or not he will finish fourth or fifth. But it doesn't really matter. In the end, Fernando Alonso showed everybody in that Alpine, when he really is on it, and he was on it. Remember, he was on it pretty good at Silverstone too.
Oh yeah, right in the sprint race too.
Exactly, and Alpine should be. This is not just a one race thing here for Alpine. They got something going here going into the break.
Yep.
So now we're going to see if they can continue that momentum and really bring the fight to the midfield. And I think there's a really good chance that they can. And today, the last 2 races, I think, were major stepping stones.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And great to see just that new blood up there, that youthful enthusiasm. It was awesome, and how everybody kind of reacted. We're going to get to the double points finish for Williams, because I don't know when the last time that happened. But let's get right into turn 1, lap 1. You get wet conditions. Everybody jumps in the pit lane after the restart. But prior to that, you have Valtteri Bottas in the Mercedes just absolutely blowing up the back end of Lando Norris. Bottas takes out Norris. He takes out Verstappen. He takes out Perez. Verstappen's able to continue in the race, but he was a non-factor at that point.
Yeah.
And there was just too much damage done, even with the red flag and what they could do with the Scotch tape to get that thing, that floor put back together in the barge board as best they could. But, just Leclerc out of the race, and just a really ill-advised late on the brake situation, so much so that it's going to get a 5-pitch grid penalty when they resume in a month's time at Spa.
Yeah, and it's really, this makes things difficult, I think, for Valtteri in some ways. You appreciate it. I just didn't understand why, as I'm watching the onboard, why in the name of God, when you've got a massive crowd around you and there's rain falling, why you would be braking anywhere close to the 100-meter board when it's raining like that. That you have to be closer to 150. You're asking for trouble here. You are asking to ram some of them behind. And one of the things we have to take out of this is Lando Norris had a ridiculously good start.
Yep.
There was a possibility that he was going to potentially be challenging, in this race. He got off to a tremendous start, considering where he was out on the starting grid and how quality was disappointing for him. And to have that happen to Lando was really, it was a tough part of the race to watch, because he's been in points for what, it was, I think
15.
15, yeah, he's
15 straight races. McLaren record.
McLaren record, but in the points, and to have that happen. And then, but the strange part, the surreal thing, is that all of his midfield, all of his competitors were all checked out of the race.
Yeah.
It's such a strange thing to see, those top end guys beyond Hamilton and Verstappen, none of them gained any ground because they all DNF'd.
Yeah.
Thanks to Bottas in this case. And it's an interesting conversation, because the thing is, Bottas had been on a really pretty good run. And I think he was making things a little bit more difficult, depending on what the situation is for Mercedes. And into that at a
Really, since Imola. Really, since Imola, he
struggled also he struggled at Baku. His pace was really bad at Baku.
Yeah.
After Azerbaijan, he did not have a great race there, and then he started getting back on it. And of late, he'd been great. He'd been on the podium and everything else, but it was just inexplicable to me why you would be getting your braking at around it looked like around 115.
Yeah.
At that point, it was just like, I don't know if there was, again, so much stuff happens. You're doing that first turn, it's raining, there's spray everywhere.
And that first turn's
but you have to be super careful.
Yeah.
And it's a downhill, exactly. It's a downhill, hard turn into turn 1. It was begging for that whole situation was begging for disaster. And again, you have Stroll out, you have Norris out, Bottas, Perez. Perez also lost I believe the power unit was damaged.
Yeah.
They take a penalty at the end of the season for that.
Yeah.
I mean, you saw
something's got to be done. I mean, and the cost cap effects too.
Yeah, exactly. And Checo, in this circumstance, you could see like he just was distraught because after what happened in Silverstone with the sprint race disaster, and he was looking in the same spot. He was in a good spot here in quali, and now he's for 2 races. Now he's one race he's not able to get to the points, and the second race is DNF going straight into a summer break.
By the way, balls moved by Hamilton late in that race when he felt Fernando kind of blocked him. I guess in a turn, and he felt he blocked him. He said, "That's dangerous at these high speeds." I'm going, balls on you, dude. You're the guy who put a tire up in there at cops.
I thought the
Hello,
same
hypocrite.
thing. I was like, I was not the most self-aware. I get it in the heat of the moment.
Yeah.
But that was not the most self-aware comment. And I like, listen, I have all the respect in the world for Lewis, but I kind of saw that comment. I was kind of like, stuff does come, call it, Formula One karma, but it was, I mean, but this is Fernando. I mean, this is what he's able, it wasn't quite a weave. Like I know a lot of the drivers hated when Fernando does one of his patented weaves.
Yeah.
It wasn't quite that though. I'm watching that thing and just going,
to me, he was just trying to get back on line when he had the line.
Exactly. And he had the line at the end of the day. And if Lewis expected him to give him that line, who you know who you're dealing with. You've driven against this man long enough in your career.
There's no chance he's giving you that line.
He may not be in the same car as you.
No.
But he's gonna fight you.
Yeah. Especially when his teammate's leading the race.
Exactly. And that's exactly what he did there. He defended it was a team game, and in the end Alpine as a team. And crazy part was, again, he actually led the race, Alonso, for about 4 or 5 laps. And it was kind of
lap 39, he took the lead. I was like, wow, look, this is crazy. Alonso's leading the race. Granted, he hadn't pitted yet, and Alonso just did.
And we all know, and again, exactly. Yeah. We knew that wasn't going to hold.
But seeing his name at the top of the leaderboard was still jarring.
It was jarring for anybody who's in the sport and used to, from his years with, McLaren prior to that.
Yeah, Ferrari, 2-time world champion.
Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah, it was just... It was like I said, it stirred that was just stirring the blood. That whole and when you messaged me and said I'm up to lap 40.
Yeah.
I'm like I can't say it. I'm like, shut your mouth, don't say a word. He needs to see this.
Yeah.
For himself.
It was unreal.
It was incredible.
The fallout of what Bottas did is so pronounced in this race. I mean, Lewis Hamilton's at the break now, is now leading the driver just 2 weeks ago, heading into Silverstone. 33-point advantage for Max Verstappen. That is now flipped. Lewis is now leading the Drivers' Championship by 6 points. Max only picked up 2 today.
Might go to 8, depending on the review. Might go to 8. So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
The Constructors now, Red Bull had an absolute grip on it. Now they're down 10 points, and it could go to more if these changes based on appeal take place. It's now 290 for Red Bull in second and 300 for Mercedes in 1. Yeah. So the thought of Mercedes' demise and Lewis Hamilton's demise this season was greatly exaggerated, as we alluded to at the time.
Yeah, and we probably should know better than that. But when we saw the pace that Max had, especially that last stretch there, starting from Baku onward, even when he had his DNF there, I still believe that Red Bull car, when right, is still the best car on the field right now. Mm-hmm. I know we want to talk about the upgrades in Hamilton that Mercedes brought, but I need to see a good clean at this point now, because with the weather condition and everything else and what occurred, and then we go to Spa. And again, these are things that are just out of your control. There's nothing you can do. But I don't want to say shame on us, but kind of shame on us for making the assumption that this thing was in the bag as soon as it was. But you can only follow the pattern of what you're seeing at the time. But as Toto said this, all it takes is it takes one DNF
Yeah.
It's suddenly a whole different ball game. And of course, you might look at that as, almost cynically after what happened to Cops 2 weeks ago. But it's the truth. At the end of the day, it's still it was a bridgeable gap.
Yep.
And here we are going into the break with Mercedes ahead. But it's not a but it's certainly they can't get comfortable.
No.
They certainly can't get comfortable. They're happy to be where they're at right now, but now they really this summer break now this month of August really turns into a fascinating time for both teams. Not even from the silly season perspective, just okay, now we get a breath. Now what are we doing to set ourselves up here for the rest of the season?
Yeah, what is Mercedes' approach now to the 2021 car, not the 2022 car? Are we allocating more resources to this year's car? Is Red Bull doing the same? Which teams are turning their attention to 2020? It's crazy.
Well, we know that Red Bull is continued to allocate for 2021. The question was, how much was Mercedes?
Yeah.
And again, there is some circumstantial stuff here
because they're looking for
that's allowed Mercedes to get back in. This isn't necessarily just a performance-based comeback. Obviously we all know what the circumstances are. That being said, Lewis's car after Max got damaged today, Lewis's car had great pace, but they made a monumental mistake at the very beginning of that race, staying on their intermediates while the rest of everybody else dived into the pits to get their tires on. And yet Lewis still was able to do what he did today.
Yeah, how about that restart?
He's
the only one on the grid.
Line. One guy said, "I'm remembering USA back the American Grand Prix back in 2005 with only a handful
the tire
of cars
one, right?
The tire one, exactly." And then I'm seeing this thing and going, Lewis is by himself on the starting line. Everybody else has dived into the pits. I was like, and somebody joked, I think it was Arava, who's one of the Quadrant guys online who plays the F1 game, and he says, "This is what happens when everybody disconnects from the lobby and only one guy's left in." I'm like, oh my God, that is so true.
One guy on a restart. It was crazy to see. When everybody else pitted, he only was five and a half seconds up on the field by the time they filtered out there. Although George Russell, oddly enough, found his way to second place. And
then he had a puncture.
Yeah, he jumped the line in the pit.
Yeah, he did.
What is he doing there?
I don't know.
He ends up finishing in the points. But real quick, we're through 11 races now. What an interesting first kind of, not quite half of the season, but just about. I mean, we start in Bahrain. You head to Imola. We saw Portimao again in Portugal. We saw a great race in France and Azerbaijan. We know what happened at the Styrian Grand Prix in Austria, and obviously Silverstone. Hungary's now in the books. But on tap, after the 4-week break, they're going right to Spa, heading to Belgium to take it for one of the greatest Grand Prix. I love Spa. I think it's just such an interesting, long track.
It's huge, yeah.
I mean, if you got to limp back because you get a puncture early in a lap there, it takes forever.
Yes.
And then we're heading to the homeland of Max Verstappen and the Dutch Grand Prix in the Netherlands.
For a massive high downforce race, again at Zandvoort.
Yeah,
and then
you're going to Monza.
Then you're going to Monza, and you're going to be the complete opposite setup the following week. It's insane.
Yeah,
it's
and then
crazy.
Still, I mean, even after that, late September, you're looking at Russia, Turkey, Japan. Is Japan on the calendar?
Japan has not changed. It is still on.
Okay.
So, and I think my feeling is, because I know I think it was the Rally Championship or the Endurance Championship that got canceled in Japan. So I was wondering, but I think because the Tokyo Olympics are a go, I guess they're figuring to themselves that what I think may happen is that they do the race, Suzuka may be done without anybody in the stands.
Okay.
I think they may, but if they do pull this off, and they do, I know if they go to Suzuka, then that's my feeling, that and they haven't changed it. So unless there's some changes, it looks like at the moment, I believe Japan is still on the docket.
Well, right now, after that, you're going to go right to Austin at the Circuit of the Americas. 1, maybe 2, who knows?
Maybe 2. Possible.
Then head to Mexico, Brazil. Still a to be determined track, and maybe that's where
That's
another
where
trip.
if there is going to be a second U.S. track, if the second U.S. race, it
Yep.
might be to replace that one. They'll be to replace the Australian one, I would believe.
Yep. And then Saudi Arabia and Abu Dhabi. So there's still a ton left in this season
Yeah.
to get to. It's just it's fascinating what's happened already, and it's hard to believe that they're not even at the midway point. Let's talk real quick. Obviously Vettel is got to give up pending the review, the second spot, P2 in this race, because they couldn't extract enough fuel from his car after the race. They were only able to extract 0.3 liters, and they need to be able to extract 1.0 liters. So I guess he was running at too high performance mode and used too much gas.
Yeah, and that's what it appears that it is for now. And I mean, they're appealing it. We will see what happens with that. But just from an overall perspective, after seeing Seb, really, it was about as good as I've seen him drive for a full race.
Yeah.
In a while. And it almost looked like 2018 Ferrari Seb.
Yeah.
It was like he looked, and there were times during that race where I'm like, he's baiting. He was trying his best to bait Ocon into a mistake, and Ocon wouldn't bite. And he was very complimentary of him after the race. Seb was very complimentary of him after the race. I felt for him because this wasn't a lucky Baku situation. I mean, it was, but that happened literally with only a couple laps to go where he jumped.
This is 66 laps of being up front.
66 laps, and he's still up front.
Yeah.
But that's where his experience comes into play. So we're going to see what happens. We'll get the final results of everything soon. But
yeah,
it would be. I mean, it's crushing for Aston Martin because this was you Stroll already out of the race. You had an opportunity for 18 points. If he managed to make Ocon make a mistake, you might have had 25. That's huge in the midfield fight. Now they've got nothing. Yeah. At the moment they have 18, but now that there's a good chance. Odds are probably there'll still be nothing. And it was a very strange weekend too, because Seb also said after the race, because we saw the controversy about him wearing the shirt, in Hungary, and he and several others had worn the shirt in support of obviously a lot of the social issues that were mentioned over the weekend. And he says, he says there was some issues about it, and he was being called to the stew. He says they can disqualify me if they want to. I don't care. And it was like, then I saw the post that he got disqualified, and I was like, and they said it was for the fuel.
Yeah.
And it was just a surreal thing because he almost sort of brought it on.
Yeah.
He almost brought it on to himself in this circumstance. So
yeah.
Well,
ahead of the other Alpine driver who we talked about earlier, Fernando Alonso, Carlos Sainz, didn't qualify great for this race, but ends up with 12 points.
Crashed
it could
out
be more.
Yeah.
And just again, another good race by Carlos Sainz. Did a good job. He wasn't going to hold off Hamilton in that situation. He just didn't have the pace at that point, but good race by him. And then how about two AlphaTauris though? 6th and 7th, Pierre Gasly and Yuki Tsunoda. Good performance out of the AlphaTauris.
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty good race for both of them. Both of them were opportunistic. And again, it's really heartening to see Pierre really coming on the last 2 years.
He's becoming very consistent.
He's becoming very consistent. And again, when Red Bull gets into, the decisions about next season, he's making it. Listen, at the end of the day, he's got to be making Horner and company and that team think hard and go, has he found it? We thought, was it, we know back then in 2019, he just wasn't ready. Didn't have the confidence. Gasly looks like he's got, but again, being a teammate with Max Verstappen, that second seat is tough.
Not easy.
It's not easy being that, and I still feel like Sergio is the guy to be there for the most part, because I feel like he just comes from a different angle on it. He wants to compete, but I think it's just more of a steady hand. It's just Sergio's had some bad luck in the last few weeks.
Yeah.
And that doesn't.
And he's
work.
had some substandard performances though too.
He has. He's had some substandard performances as well. But I would say again, getting to Yuki. I mean, after what happened at Austria, twice going into crossing the line in the pit lane and getting hit with a pit lane penalty. He's coming along, Yuki. And again,
yep.
he has shown me a lot of promise. I think with more racecraft and more experience, Yuki's got a real chance to be a star.
He's
in this
very quick.
Very quick, and even he did a decent job for a few laps holding Hamilton at bay.
Yeah.
Early on, and he couldn't hold them all forever, and that's just experience and Lewis just knowing when to attack, and Yuki not quite having the experience, but he had good pace, and he didn't, at the end of it, Yuki didn't, even though Hamilton passed him, he didn't falter. He didn't look like he lost confidence. He just raced his race.
Yeah. Yeah. And how about this? 8th and 9th. I alluded to it before. Back-to-back Williams, not just one Williams in the points. It's Latifi and Russell both finishing in the points. Both, I thought, there's a lot of circumstance here, and we understand that with this race.
Yeah.
But both capitalized on the circumstance when, things at one point were going so bad for Williams, they found a way to be part of the circumstance, not, taking advantage of it. And they do here. Latifi, phenomenal race by Latifi.
Yeah.
And Russell as well to finish, 8th and 9th in this race, and they pick up 16 points.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a really great moment for them again to be able to do what they were able to do today. I thought this was like light years. This looked like more like Latifi in F2. The promise that he showed in F2, and we hadn't really seen it yet. And finally it came through. And he really, and again, we know the track. If you play this track just right, it's extreme. We know overtakes are very tough.
Yep.
Overtakes are very tough to do.
Second toughest on the calendar. This in Spain.
In Spain
and Monaco.
And Monaco's in a class by itself. We know that. It's all quality, and that's that. But as we've heard before with Hungaroring, people refer to Hungaroring as Monaco without the walls when it comes to the downforce and everything. And it's a tough track, and it's when it's hot, it's difficult, it's extremely technical. The G forces that it puts on you, it's just a real tough race to do. And I got to give Nicholas, I got to give George a ton of credit. For putting, and even George, he basically said, if we need to sacrifice, Nick's really going here. If I need to sacrifice here, I'm going to do it. And he's still, at the end of the day, he's rewarded. And for George, how many races in a row has this guy got himself to Q2, Q3? He completely washes out. Starts 17th on the grid. I'm like, there's no chance in heck for Russell in this race, and he finally gets his points.
Yeah, he was emotional after it.
And he was emotional after the race.
Look, both of those guys have poured so much into that team to get it back.
Yeah.
And look, Williams is going to end up in a cost cap world going forward. Yeah. They're going to end up with the funding they have and everything else. That team's on the rise. Are they going to be the Williams of old? Probably not. But yeah, it's a tough situation. So Verstappen finishes just behind Russell in 10th. He picks up the point, maybe move up another position to grab another one. We'll see how that pans out with the Vettel decision that's going to be made by the FIA. Kimi out of the points, but maybe in the points. Daniel Ricciardo ends up in 12th. Kind of a ho-hum race for him once again. He was damaged a little bit.
He got damaged in that initial turn, and he was struggling through. Again, there were several people, beyond Max, who were somewhat involved, who managed to continue to race, who they were managing their car. They were just trying to get through, maybe get to points. We saw him get overtake. It was the double overtake, the undercut done by Hamilton.
Yeah.
That passed both him and Max, and really get himself.
Good strategy by Mercedes there.
It was good strategy by Mercedes, and I'm going to give Lewis a lot of credit here for there's a lot of times in this race where it got difficult. We saw him up on the podium. He was really struggling physically. He was, he had to go see the doctor and everything. And interesting enough, he says, I'm still physically not, and he attributes this. He says because it happened. We forget it happened late last season.
Yeah,
it was COVID diagnosis. And that I think his breathing capacity isn't what it has been before.
You've heard him really out of breath a lot on the team radio, too.
He was, and I think he was, and again, it was super, we know how hot, and just Hungaroring is it's just a crucible. Yeah. It could be a real crucible. And I think physically, the fact he was able to do it, I want to obviously give him his due here for being able to do what he was able to do today. Yeah. The battles that he had today and still managed to get to the podium It was impressive. That's, you saw Ocon go to him when they were doing the picture, and he's exit. Lewis, are you all right? And you could see he's struggling and trying to keep himself up. He could barely hold up the trophy. It looked like he was going to keel over.
Yeah,
he was having a bit.
Might be a bit of a long hauler, a COVID long hauler. Like, we don't know. It's the thing we got to realize with this. Like, just because these people are professional athletes or world class race car drivers, doesn't mean that they're immune to COVID long haul. They're humans.
We're all going to be dealing. Again, anybody who's had it is going to be. Yeah. It depends on the physiology of the individual, but absolutely, it's something to keep in mind that he really, when he got at the end of that race, he got up on that. So he was fine during interview, and then he got up there, and I guess maybe going up the steps and everything else, and at that point it looked like
he looked shaky.
He looked shaky. He literally held himself. At one point, he had his hand up against, I think, the screen just to catch his balance. And they were all, and then at that point he went over to the middle, and then he did end up making it to press conference afterwards, but it looked like he must have had to replenish a lot, probably.
Last guy to talk about is Mick Schumacher, and he's in F1 right now to learn in that Haas car. And boy, I thought he did a lot of learning today because he had some real good wheel-to-wheel battles with some really high-end race car drivers today.
Oh yeah, and he and Max.
It was great to see.
Lap 10 and 11.
Yeah,
he and Max really. I was impressed by Mick. He could do what he could do, and eventually, the car is the car. But I thought early in that race, laps 10 and 11, he couldn't pass Schumacher for multiple. And again, damaged car, we get that. But that being said, Max was still doing what Max likes to do. He was still like, and the fact that Mick was willing to get the elbows out and say, you know what, I'm going to battle you here because I know you're the Dutch Lion and you're a wounded lion, but I'm going to, this is my learning experience now, and I got to give Mick a ton of credit. And I think, when we get into our discussion this week about what's coming up for next year, I think Mick is going to be someone, if he continues on the pace that he's at, there may be some potential idea that, will he be with Haas next season? Could he be looking at another opportunity? We'll see. But I thought he acquitted himself particularly well today, Mick Schumacher.
Yeah, I agree. I was really impressed with the way he drove that car today. So good on him. Yeah, this week we're going to have another episode for you as we'll get into the silly season and into some of the storylines and things that we haven't been able to quite dip our toe into here with the craziness of this season. And it has been crazy. It has been absolutely nuts. I'm counting down the minute. I'm not ready for the month break, to be honest with you. I want to go to Spa next weekend. I want to be watching free practice one Friday morning at 6 a.m. I'm ready. I love Spa, and I can't wait for the remainder of this calendar. But we can all kind of, and like Lewis, kind of regather ourselves, catch our breath, and get ready for what's going to be an incredible fall at the end of this month of August, all the way through to Yas Marina and Abu Dhabi. And you get the feeling that we're not going to know who's going to win the championship until the final 2 laps of Abu Dhabi, don't you?
And I'm kind of hoping we have a bit of a redo of 2016.
Oh, when Lewis is holding up holding up the pack there.
Holding up our color commentator from the race today. Who, by the way, let's get into real quick before we get off here. I thought it was a really good performance by Nico Rosberg in the commentary booth today. I thought he and David Croft were really good together. It was funny to see sort of the give and take, the corrections. Nico likes to make his corrections almost Tony Romo-esque during correcting the color, the play-by-play man, and it was fun to watch. And I got to give also, I love, but I got to give another shout also to obviously to Karun Chandok. This guy, it's essential. Watching his stuff on the SkyPad is just fantastic.
Awesome. Yeah.
He's so good at just breaking down the situation and really helping to sort of give you that idea from a racer viewpoint what he does. So again, just phenomenal stuff.
I agree. I thought Nico was awesome. I really do. I felt like I learned a ton about downforce, about certain corners of that track, what you want, how to defend from a world champion, a recent world champion. I thought it was really educational, and I hope they use them. I love Martin Brundle, and I love Paul di Resta. I like them all. But I thought Nico was incredibly good for having such a little amount of reps in the position as the lead analyst on a Formula One race.
Yeah, we've seen him like a trackside. We've seen him talk and commentate.
Yeah, or free
But
practice or
the free
whatever.
practice, or and he was there for quali, and then obviously he had the race. Yeah, he was. I thought Nico did a great job. It was, and again, for those who've ever seen sort of some of this commentary that he does, where he breaks down tracks on YouTube on his YouTube channel,
Yeah.
using using the F1 game, and he's been doing these breakdowns, I think, for about 3 years now, or 2 or 3 years now, and they're really good, and he really gets into every single corner.
Yeah.
And he kind of took that in a live. He took for what he does on those YouTube, sort of almost like tutorials, so to speak, and then took it into this live race in that moment where you have to be super quick with it.
Yeah.
And seeing everything in front of it, and you could see how he processes everything really fast. And then you go, that's pretty, because he's able to communicate that to the audience in a way that you could process it and understand what's going on in the moment. And you, as you said, Jason, you'll learn something today while watching this race.
Yeah, and you get the sense that he's repaired his relationship with Lewis too.
I think they're
to some extent.
To some extent, I know they're not. I don't
like they were.
Like it's certainly not. It's certainly not like almost at each other's throats, throwing hats at one another, like it was. But it was. I don't think they have what I would call. I mean, I still think there's always going to be a mutual respect between the two.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're ever going to necessarily be buddy. I think what happened during the Civil War is something that that's
irreparable.
It may not. Yeah, I don't know if you're ever going to be like where they were when they were younger. But I mean, that's the nature of the sport. I mean, it's just when you got two high-level guys like that and they're just going at it with one another. And then for Nico, I do sometimes wonder where a lot of people say you win the championship and then you suddenly retire. And I get it from a personal perspective. It took, I always got the feeling that it took so much out of Nico just to get to that one championship. And, he felt comfortable enough stepping away from it.
Yep.
He's been good for him. But,
yeah. Phenomenal job in the booth, though.
Absolutely. Fantastic.
Or as they call it, the commentary box.
The commentary box.
The commentary box. I love some of the sayings, like "very good indeed." Is it Croftyism?
Indeed. Very good indeed.
And then the Martin Brundle one is, "It must be said." He'll always say, "Well, he wasn't moving very fast. It must be said." I love that. I love it. It's just great stuff.
That's Martin for you.
He's just as good as it gets. That's enough horsepower to power your regular old family saloon car. Referring to the ERS pack. It's so good. Anyway, that's going to put a wrap on episode 9. We'll be back midweek with another episode. Right here, everybody, thanks for listening. Leave us a rating and review as well, and we'll talk to you on the next episode 10 of the Stick to F1 podcast.